Every knight failed to save the alien princess. Then the human grinned. The twin sons of Urindor cast long golden shadows across the crystal towers of the Aelorian capital. Light danced on the floating spires, reflecting like 1,000 tiny stars. From the surface, the city seemed impossible, almost magical, suspended above the jagged cliffs and forests below. It was a place of wonder, but beneath its beauty, a shadow loomed. Princess Liara, heir to the Aelorian throne, had been taken. The Void Sentinels, a ruthless alien faction known across the star systems, had invaded the outer edges of Urindor and captured her. Every knight of the Aelorian Order had tried to save her. Every attempt had failed. Inside the grand hall of the palace, a council of the kingdom's most esteemed knights gathered. Their armor gleamed in the sunlight, polished to perfection, each marking a tale of battles fought and victories won. Yet today, their faces were grim, their pride bruised. "Another failure," said Sir Callan, a tall knight with silver hair that shone in the light. His voice carried the weight of disappointment. "Liara remains in their hands. How much longer can our people hope?" Sir Arthon, the youngest of the council, clenched his fists. "We trained our whole lives for this, every plan, every strategy wasted." The hall was silent except for the quiet hum of the city outside. None of the knights could find words to answer. They had all tried. They had all failed. And yet, far beyond the hall, a human ship glided silently through Urindor's atmosphere. Unlike the Aelorians, humans were rare in this sector of space. Captain Marcus Hale, a human explorer from Earth, had been sent to observe and assist, though he carried no Aelorian rank, no armor, and no formal standing in their ancient order. He was an outsider, a stranger in a culture bound by centuries of tradition. Marcus' ship descended quietly to the city outskirts, landing in a clearing between tall crystal trees. His eyes scanned the landscape, noting the delicate energy patterns flowing around the city, the faint hum of protective shields, and the distant glimmer of the Void Sentinel fortress. Unlike the knights, Marcus had no pride to defend. He had no rigid code of honor to follow. He had only curiosity, observation, and a mind trained to think differently. As he walked toward the palace, he overheard the knights discussing their latest attempt. "We breached the outer barrier," one knight said, frustration clear in his voice, "but the inner maze, it's impossible. The sentinels anticipate every move." Marcus' brow furrowed. He didn't know much about these aliens yet, but his instincts told him something the knights had missed. Patterns existed, even in chaos. Every fortress had a logic, a flaw, if one knew where to look. The council concluded, reluctantly, that no more knights could be spared. Each was exhausted, each scarred from their failures. The Void Sentinel's fortress was more than a place of imprisonment. It was a puzzle designed to test every assumption. Marcus approached the council cautiously. "Excuse me," he said, his voice firm but calm. "I am Captain Marcus Hale. I've studied your fortress remotely and may have an idea that could succeed where others failed." The knights turned, eyebrows raised. A human, speaking in their sacred council hall, some whispered, some scoffed. "Your place here is observation, human," Sir Callan said, his tone polite but cold. "We do not need advice from those who do not understand our code." Marcus smiled faintly. "I understand codes well enough," he said, "but I also understand logic, observation, and patterns. Perhaps they can help more than tradition alone." The council was silent. No one had thought of looking at the fortress this way. Tradition had failed them. Perhaps an outsider's perspective was their only hope. Marcus asked to witness the last failed attempt firsthand. He accompanied the knights to the edge of the Void Sentinel territory, observing from a distance as their forces moved with precision. The fortress rose from the rocky cliffs like a jagged crown. Its walls shimmered with shifting energy, corridors bending in ways that seemed impossible, traps invisible to the eye. The knights approached boldly as they always had. First, the outer defenses fell quickly, Marcus noted the predictable patterns. But then came the inner maze. The knights encountered shifting corridors, energy barriers that reacted to their movements, and traps that seemed almost alive. One by one, they fell back, battered and exhausted. The last knight, Sir Arthon, barely escaped with his life, retreating to the council hall. Marcus had watched everything quietly, his mind racing. They make assumptions, he said to himself. They expect a direct confrontation. They follow predictable paths, but every pattern has a flaw. Back in the city, he pored over his observations, comparing them with maps and reports. Every trap, every patrol, every corridor movement, he mapped them. Slowly, a picture emerged. The Void Sentinels were not random. They were logical, even brilliant, but their brilliance depended on predictable responses to threats. Every knight who entered did so expecting honor battles, courage under pressure, direct attacks. Marcus did not fight that way. He thought differently. By nightfall, Marcus had a plan forming. It was not a plan of force or duel. It was a plan of observation, timing, and misdirection. He would use the fortress's own logic against it, exploiting patterns the knights had ignored. Yet, even as he worked, doubts lingered. The Void Sentinels were clever, and failure could be fatal. But Marcus reminded himself of what humans did best: adapt, improvise, and think beyond tradition. The next morning, Marcus presented his initial ideas to the council. He spoke of decoys, signal interference, and alternative paths, none of which required brute force. The knights listened, skeptical at first, but the more he explained, the more curiosity replaced doubt. Sir Kalen spoke finally. "You speak boldly, human. But your ideas may have merit. Perhaps, for the first time, our princess has hope beyond honor and strength." Marcus nodded. "Hope comes from thinking differently," he said. "Sometimes, a problem cannot be solved by what has worked before. You taught me about courage, and I will teach you about perspective." That night, as the city lights reflected on the crystal towers, Marcus gazed at the distant fortress. Somewhere within those walls, Princess Liara waited. Every knight had failed. Every strategy had crumbled. But Marcus grinned. He knew humans had a gift, not the strongest armor, not the sharpest sword, but the ability to see what others could not, to find solutions where others saw none. And tomorrow, he would begin. The night air over Urindor was crisp, carrying the faint hum of energy shields from the city's towers. Marcus Hale sat alone in his quarters, a holographic map of the Void Sentinel fortress floating before him. The glowing lines traced corridors, defense points, and energy traps. He traced a finger over a twisting path and shook his head. The fortress was not just a maze, it was a living puzzle. Every movement triggered something, every misstep had consequences. Yet Marcus smiled. Where the Elorian knights had seen danger, he saw patterns. Where they had failed, he saw opportunity. Marcus began his preparations in the early hours of the morning. He did not carry a sword or wear shining armor. Instead, he relied on tools of observation, timing, and human ingenuity. Small drones buzzed quietly from his backpack, scanning the fortress from above. Miniature sensors and signal disruptors were ready to jam communications between sentinel patrols. His plan was not to fight, it was to outthink. He studied the movements of the Void Sentinels for hours. Each patrol followed a schedule, each energy barrier cycled in a pattern. Their labyrinth was formidable, yes, but predictable. Humans were different from Elorian knights. They were trained to observe, improvise, and exploit weaknesses. Marcus had no pride at stake. He could experiment, fail, and try again. By afternoon, he was ready for a small test. He activated a drone and sent it toward the fortress. It zipped along invisible energy lines, avoiding the main defenses, recording every patrol and barrier reaction. The drone returned with footage that confirmed Marcus' suspicion. The Sentinels' patterns were consistent, almost machine-like. "It's like a game," Marcus muttered to himself. "Every move predictable, every reaction calculated. and every calculation can be beaten. Later that day, he requested a meeting with the council. The Aelorian knights watched him cautiously, unsure if the human's strange tactics would succeed. Marcus explained his plan carefully. "We don't attack directly," he said. "We create diversions, manipulate the barriers, and move where they do not expect us. Their traps are clever, but they are designed to be defeated if you understand the rules." Sir Arthon, still recovering from his last failed attempt, frowned. "But we have tried so many strategies already. How is this different?" Marcus leaned forward. "Because you all think like Aelorian knights. Honor, courage, combat, all the things the Sentinels expect. I think differently. I look for what no one else sees. Small flaws, timing gaps, predictable reactions." The council listened in silence. Some were skeptical. Others were curious. Sir Kalen finally nodded. "Very well, we will observe. But remember, human, if your plan fails, the princess remains captive and our people will despair further." Marcus accepted the challenge. That evening, he prepared a small team, a few knights willing to follow his unconventional methods. They carried lightweight gear, simple weapons, and his devices. The plan was not to fight the Sentinels directly, but to move with stealth and strategy. The fortress loomed ahead, dark and jagged against the fading sun. Marcus led his small team to a ridge overlooking the first barrier. Using his drones, he mapped a path that avoided the main Sentinels. The barriers pulsed with energy, shifting unpredictably to an untrained eye. But Marcus noticed the rhythm, a slight delay after each pulse. It was subtle but enough to exploit. "Follow my lead," Marcus whispered. "Move only when the barrier pulses fade. Timing is everything." The knights followed, uneasy but trusting Marcus' judgment. The first few obstacles were tense but successful. The Sentinels, patrols, were fooled by small decoys Marcus had planted, stones emitting light and sound mimicking human movement. The fortress seemed alive, responding to their presence, but Marcus stayed calm, adjusting paths as needed. Hours passed. Marcus' team moved deeper into the labyrinth. Energy corridors twisted, floors shifted, walls rotated. To the knights it seemed impossible, a trap no one could survive. But Marcus had already accounted for these mechanisms. He led the team through blind spots, predicted rotating walls, and timed movements perfectly. At one point, a patrol appeared, two sentinels moving silently with glowing weapons. The knights froze, unsure what to do. Marcus held up his hand, signaling them to stay low. He activated a small device that projected a decoy sound to the far side of the corridor. The sentinels paused, investigating, then moved away. "See," Marcus whispered, a small grin on his face. "Logic beats force every time." The team reached a chamber that Marcus had identified as a critical control point. Here, the fortress energy systems were managed. A misstep could trigger alarms throughout the entire structure. Marcus studied the control panel, alien symbols, shifting lights, and energy readings. "Stand back," he said. "I'll handle this." He connected his device, designed to interface with unknown technology using simple universal patterns. The energy readings fluctuated, barriers pulsing faster, then slower. Marcus adjusted timing, observed reaction, and manipulated the system to open a path deeper into the fortress. The knights watched in awe. This was no brute force attack. No sword would have helped here. Only intelligence, observation, and careful manipulation. "Move," Marcus commanded. They passed through the newly opened corridor, deeper into the fortress. As they advanced, Marcus noticed a subtle flaw. The Sentinels' energy barriers depended on pattern recognition. If the pattern was disrupted, even for a moment, the barrier failed. He smiled again. This was the key. Hours turned into night. The team moved cautiously but steadily. They avoided main patrols, navigated rotating walls, and bypassed energy traps. Every step Marcus took was calculated, every move deliberate. Finally, they reached the chamber where the princess was held. A glowing cage of energy surrounded her, humming with power. Marcus studied it carefully. Direct force would fail. The knights looked at him, unsure. Even their strongest blows would not break through. Marcus knelt and examined the energy flow. "It's a puzzle," he said quietly, "not a prison. It responds to energy input, timing, and pattern. If we can disrupt the sequence at just the right moment, the barrier will open." Sir Arthon stepped forward nervously. "But how?" "We don't understand this technology," Marcus smiled. "That's why I'm here. Watch." He adjusted his device, sending a small pulse that matched the frequency of the energy matrix. The barrier shimmered, flickered, then stabilized. Another pulse, timed perfectly, the barrier opened a small gap. "Now," Marcus whispered. The princess stepped forward carefully, guided by Marcus' instructions. The knights helped her through the gap, careful not to trigger any alarms. They were not free yet, but they had taken the first crucial step. Marcus had proven the impossible could be done. The fortress had flaws, and humans could see them where others could not. As they retreated, Marcus glanced back at the fortress. He knew more challenges awaited. The sentinels would not give up easily, and the labyrinth had many layers. But hope had returned. The princess was alive, and a path to freedom existed. The Aelorian knights, once skeptical, now looked at Marcus with respect. They realized that tradition and honor alone were not enough. Sometimes, a new perspective, a different way of thinking, could succeed where centuries of experience had failed. That night, back at their hidden base, Marcus studied the fortress further. Every corridor, every trap, every energy pattern, he mapped it meticulously. The rescue was only the beginning. He needed to understand every detail to ensure the princess could be safely extracted. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the most skilled in combat. But humans had curiosity, adaptability, and ingenuity, qualities that could bend even the most rigid of challenges. And Marcus grinned. He knew that tomorrow, the real test would begin. The fortress still held many secrets, and the sentinels would adapt. But Marcus had something the knights did not: a mind unbound by tradition, willing to think differently and willing to take risks no one else dared to take. The princess, unaware of the full scope of Marcus' plan, watched him with a mixture of awe and trust. She had seen many fail before. She had lost hope many times. But this human, clever and calm, had shown her a glimmer of something new, hope born not from strength, but from intellect and courage. And in the quiet of the night, Marcus prepared for the next stage. Every movement, every calculation, every moment counted. The fortress may have been vast and deadly, but humans had a way of finding light in the darkest places. Tomorrow, they would go deeper. And Marcus knew, as he looked at the glowing energy matrix of the princess' cage, that no knight, no matter how brave, could match the human mind. The fortress loomed above them, jagged and unyielding, like a living shadow against the pale light of Erendor's twin moons. Marcus Hale led the small team deeper into its heart. The air was thick with hums of energy barriers and the faint scent of ozone, evidence of the fortress, advanced technology. Every step forward demanded caution, every misstep a risk of alerting the void sentinels. The princess walked quietly behind the team, her eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Unlike the knights, who were trained for honor and courage, Marcus approached every obstacle with calm calculation. His human mind saw patterns where the fortress seemed chaotic, logic where the labyrinth seemed random. "Stay close," he whispered to the knights, "and trust me, force alone won't get us far, only thought and timing." The first challenge was a corridor of shifting walls. The walls rotated slowly, narrowing paths and creating traps that could crush or separate them. Sir Kalen tensed, ready to charge forward, but Marcus held up a hand. "Watch," Marcus said. He measured the timing between the wall movements, noting a brief pause between rotations. "We move here just after the pause, and the path stays open long enough for all of us to pass." They advanced carefully. The knights followed Marcus' lead, stepping precisely when he indicated. The walls shifted dangerously close at one point, but none were harmed. "Not bad," Sir Arthon muttered under his breath. "For a human," Marcus smiled faintly. "Logic beats strength if you watch carefully." Next came a patrol of void sentinels. Two guards glided silently along a raised platform, weapons glowing. The knights instinctively prepared for combat, but Marcus shook his head. "No fighting. Watch, wait, and distract." He activated a small device, sending a holographic projection of movement across the opposite end of the corridor. The sentinels paused, their sensors detecting the phantom motion. Then, believing the threat was far away, they continued along their path. "Move now," Marcus whispered. The group slipped past unnoticed. The knights exchanged astonished glances. This was nothing like the battles they were trained for. It was subtle, careful, almost like playing a game of wits. Hours passed as they navigated corridor after corridor. Each step tested patience and observation. The fortress seemed to anticipate their presence, walls and floors shifting, energy barriers cycling in complex sequences. Yet Marcus always stayed one step ahead. Finally, they reached the inner sanctum, the most secure part of the fortress, where Princess Liara had been held for weeks. The chamber door was an enormous energy barrier, glowing with patterns that pulsed rhythmically. It was a trap that had defeated every knight before them. Marcus examined it closely. "This is the key," he said. "Direct attack won't work. We need to disrupt its rhythm, force it to reset, and create an opening." The knights watched, unsure how to help. Even Sir Kalen, with decades of experience, shook his head. But Marcus' mind worked like a human machine, analyzing the frequencies, noting the microdelays, and calculating the precise moment to act. He attached a small device to the barrier's edge, sending carefully timed pulses. The energy flickered, then pulsed in a different sequence. Another pulse, perfectly timed, the barrier shimmered, weakened, and a small gap appeared. The princess stepped forward cautiously, guided by Marcus. She felt the human's confidence, not arrogance, and trusted his judgment. The knights followed, astonished at the precision of Marcus' actions. No brute force, no flashy attack, only observation, calculation, and human ingenuity. Suddenly, alarms blared. The sentinels had detected the energy disturbance. Figures emerged from the shadows, moving with speed and precision. Marcus held up his hand, signaling the team to pause. "We don't fight," he said. "We outthink them." He activated another device that projected multiple holographic decoys into the chamber, confusing the sentinels' sensors. The guards paused, uncertain, scanning the illusions. Marcus used the moment to adjust the energy barrier, expanding the gap just enough for the team to pass through safely. The knights followed, carefully stepping over the energy pulses. The sentinels fired warning shots, but none struck. Marcus' timing was perfect. His human mind had found the advantage where brute force had failed. Once inside, they found themselves in a room of glowing crystals. The princess' cell hovered in the center, a cage of pure energy. It pulsed with power, responding to every movement in the room. Even the knights hesitated, unsure how to approach. Marcus examined the cage. "It responds to input like a puzzle," he said. "We can't break it, we can only solve it." He moved closer, studying the energy patterns. Each pulse had a rhythm, a sequence, a logic. He connected his device, sending micropulses that matched the energy's frequency, carefully observing its reaction. The barrier shimmered, flickered, then stabilized. Another pulse, perfectly timed, and the cage opened slightly. "Step forward," Marcus instructed. The princess walked cautiously, guided by his careful timing. The knights followed, helping her through the small gap. They were free but not safe yet. The sentinels were converging. Marcus looked around quickly, analyzing escape routes. "There," he whispered, pointing to a narrow passage partially hidden behind shifting crystal panels. "Follow me, stay close, one step at a time." The team moved quickly but quietly. Marcus led them through twisting corridors, carefully avoiding patrols and timing each step with precision. Every wrong move could trigger alarms or worse, but Marcus' mind stayed sharp. Humans were not the strongest or the fastest, but they could adapt, improvise, and think in ways others could not. Finally, they reached the outer walls of the fortress. The energy shields there were weaker than the inner defenses. Marcus studied the pattern and noticed a slight delay, a fraction of a second between pulses. "Now," he whispered. Using a small pulse device, he disrupted the shield's rhythm just long enough for them to slip through. The team emerged into the night air, free from the fortress grasp. The princess looked at Marcus, awe in her eyes. You saved us," she said softly. Marcus shrugged. "We saved each other. I just found a way that worked." The knights, once skeptical, now regarded Marcus with respect. They had relied on strength, honor, and tradition. Humans relied on something different: observation, logic, and creativity. And tonight, that difference had made all the difference. Back at their hidden camp, the team rested. The princess was safe, and the fortress, though still dangerous, had been outsmarted. Marcus studied maps of the structure, noting weaknesses for any future missions. "Humans are strange," Sir Kalen said quietly, almost to himself. "We train for battle, but the mind can do things we never imagined." Marcus smiled. "That's what makes humans different. We survive by thinking, by noticing patterns, by solving problems in ways others can't." The night passed peacefully, but Marcus knew the journey was not over. The fortress still held secrets, and the sentinels would not give up easily. Tomorrow, they would need to move carefully, avoid traps, and ensure the princess returned safely to the city. Yet for the first time, hope burned brightly. Humans had proven that courage was not only about strength or swords, it was about intelligence, adaptability, and determination. And Marcus, the human, had shown that even the most impossible challenges could be overcome with a clear mind and a bold heart. As dawn approached, he looked at the princess and the knights resting peacefully. He knew the final test lay ahead. The fortress had many layers still to conquer, and the sentinels were cunning. But Marcus had one advantage they could never match: the human mind, free to think beyond the rules. And he grinned. The first light of dawn touched the jagged towers of the Void Sentinel Fortress. The team, led by Marcus Hale, had spent the night mapping the remaining obstacles and planning their final escape. The fortress was a massive puzzle, full of traps, shifting walls, and energy barriers. But Marcus' mind, sharp and adaptable, had found the flaws. Now the final stage of the rescue awaited. Princess Liara walked beside him, her eyes still wide with amazement. "I never imagined someone could outthink the sentinels," she said quietly. "Even our knights failed." Marcus gave a small smile. "They are brave," he said. "But bravery alone cannot solve every problem. Sometimes, thinking differently is what makes the difference." The knights, once skeptical, now followed closely, trusting Marcus' judgment. They had witnessed his mind at work, solving problems in ways they never thought possible. Sir Kalen, always proud, nodded silently, acknowledging Marcus' skill. Their first challenge was a long corridor filled with rotating energy walls. Unlike before, these walls were faster and more unpredictable. Marcus studied their rhythm, noting a subtle pause every few seconds. Timing would be critical. "Move when the pulse fades," Marcus instructed. "Don't rush. Stay precise." The team advanced carefully. The walls twisted dangerously close, but Marcus guided each step. The knights, following his lead, began to understand that this was not combat. It was a game of observation and patience. At the corridor's end, they encountered a patrol of Void Sentinels. Unlike before, there were 4 guards, moving in coordinated patterns. The knights tensed, ready for a fight, but Marcus shook his head. "No fighting," he said. "We use distraction." He activated a small device, projecting a moving light across the far end of the corridor. The sentinels paused, scanning the area, then turned to investigate. Marcus motioned for the group to move. Step by step, They passed unnoticed, the guards none the wiser. Hours passed as they navigated further into the fortress. Every corridor, every barrier, every patrol tested their patience and skill. Marcus' calculations were precise, his timing perfect. Humans were not the strongest, but they could observe, adapt, and outthink their opponents, a skill no knight had fully mastered. Finally, they reached the final chamber. The princess' cell hovered in the center, a cage of glowing energy. Pulses of light shifted rhythmically, reacting to the presence of anyone near it. Marcus examined it carefully, his mind working quickly. "This is it," he whispered. "The final barrier, brute force won't work. We solve it." He attached his device to the energy cage, sending precise pulses that matched the rhythm. The cage flickered, shimmered, then stabilized. Another pulse, the barrier weakened further, enough to create a small opening. Princess Liara stepped forward carefully, guided by Marcus. The knights followed, awe evident on their faces. Even the most skilled Elorian warriors had never seen such precision and intellect applied in this way. Suddenly, the sentinels activated a defense mechanism. Energy walls rose rapidly around them, attempting to trap the group inside the chamber. Marcus reacted instantly. "Follow me," he shouted. He activated another device, creating a temporary disruption in the energy field. The walls paused for a split second, just enough for the team to slip through. The princess glanced at him, astonished. You planned for everything," she said. Marcus shrugged. "I only needed to think differently. That's what humans do." They ran through twisting corridors, avoiding the final patrols. Marcus calculated each step, predicting the sentinels' movements and exploiting every gap. The knights began to understand his methods, moving in sync with his guidance rather than relying on brute strength. At last they reached the outer edge of the fortress. The final energy shield loomed before them, pulsating with deadly rhythm. Marcus studied it carefully, noting a slight delay in its cycles. "Step with me," he instructed. "Move precisely when the pulse fades." With careful timing, they advanced. The shield flickered, then opened just long enough for them to pass. They emerged into the open air, free from the fortress grasp. The team paused to catch their breath, the first rays of Erendor's twin suns warming their faces. Marcus looked back at the fortress, jagged and formidable, yet now defeated not by strength, but by ingenuity, patience, and observation. Princess Liara turned to Marcus, gratitude shining in her eyes. "You saved me. You risked everything and you didn't even fight them." "You used your mind," Marcus smiled faintly. "Sometimes the mind is stronger than any weapon," he said. "Humans survive by thinking, adapting, and seeing what others cannot. Today, that made the difference." The knights, silent at first, now spoke. Sir Kalen stepped forward. "Human, you have shown us something important," he said. "Strength and courage are vital, but so is thinking differently. We have much to learn from you." Sir Arthon nodded in agreement. "I thought only combat could save the princess. I was wrong. Your mind saved her." Marcus shook his head. "We all saved her, together. The difference is that I saw the path others missed, and humans have a way of seeing where others do not." The princess smiled, her eyes reflecting the brilliance of the rising sun. "Your people are remarkable," she said. "You bring hope not through weapons but through thought. You have given my people a chance to survive, and a lesson in courage of a different kind." Back in the city, the Elorians celebrated the princess' return. News spread quickly. A human had outsmarted the Void Sentinels, achieving what their greatest knights could not. Marcus remained humble, quietly observing, taking notes for future missions. The Elorian Council approached him formally. "Captain Marcus Hale," Sir Kalen said, "your actions have proven invaluable. You have shown us that strength and honor are not enough. Sometimes intelligence, adaptability, and courage of the mind are what save lives. We are in your debt." Marcus smiled politely. "I only did what humans do best. We observe, we adapt, we think. That's all. The princess is safe, and that is what matters." Princess Liara approached him. You have my gratitude and my respect. Humans have a place among us now, not just as allies, but as thinkers and problem solvers. You remind us that every obstacle has a solution if we are clever enough to find it. Marcus nodded. He had faced the impossible, and humans had triumphed, not through armor or weapons, but through mind and courage. The Void Sentinels had been clever, but they had underestimated the human ability to think differently, adapt, and find a solution where none seemed possible. That evening, as the twin suns set, casting golden light over the city, Marcus looked at the horizon. The princess was safe. The knights had learned a new kind of strength, and humans had proven that ingenuity could overcome even the deadliest challenges. He grinned quietly to himself. Humanity had survived again, not because of brute strength or strict tradition, but because of curiosity, cleverness, and the courage to see differently. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and puzzles, but Marcus knew one thing. As long as humans existed, hope would always find a way. The Elorians would remember this day for centuries, the day when a human mind triumphed where centuries of tradition had failed. And Marcus, he would continue his journey, exploring new worlds, solving impossible problems, and reminding everyone that sometimes the human mind was the greatest weapon of all. As night fell over the city, the princess and her people celebrated. The knights bowed in respect, and Marcus Hale simply smiled, knowing that the impossible had been made possible because humans dared to think differently. The galaxy was dangerous, yes, but with humans around there was always a chance. And that chance, Marcus thought, was enough to make any human grin.